Hello, hello, hello. This is Carl A. Smith, aka Dr. Cash, for your monthly stock market analysis for the month concluding of July 2020. Can't believe we've moved so fast. Wow, what a month. Let's start at the bottom of the chart here today and take a look at our commodities. We typically don't really dig that deep into the commodity section, but this past month showcased significant upward movement in a bullish nature on gold and also on silver. As you can see, significant percentage up move for both gold and silver, with silver coming in at a whopping 33% move over the last month, and then gold on a very large breakout of about approximately 11% move. All of this predicated on very strong earnings reports on all of your major companies last week, with 1/3 of the Dow reporting, as well as the big heavyweights out of the NASDAQ. However, we didn't see necessarily a huge up move on all of your majors in comparison to last month. However, all major names reported very strong earnings and a few misses here and there that caused that consistent kind of push-pull action. But the NASDAQ did close out the month, and certainly this past week, on a very, very bullish note, and we'll highlight that as we dig into our charts. But you can see a very large range of movement of price across the board, both on the S&P and on the NASDAQ, as there is continued uncertainty from a U.S. economic perspective, as we came in this past week with our GDP report, coming in at a whopping negative 34%, which is the greatest of all time in the United States. So very solid economic information that's coming out very negatively, but it seems like the market is just unfeathered, moving upward and continuing to showcase the strength of the bulls, and the bears are getting very much overwhelmed. Now, we'll highlight also this week a few key names that we'll take a look at moving forward, but at the same time, we do want to kind of highlight some of the earnings that are forthcoming of this week and want to showcase how those can be an impact to us all and be enabling us to have some preparation. As you can see, this upcoming week's worth of earnings are not as heavy in regards to very visible names, but there are a few names that we will be watching that could impact the broader market. Certainly on Tuesday after the market closed, we see Beyond Meat as well as the Disney companies coming in with their reports. Also, a little bit of an indication also what could be taking place out of the gambling sector when reports their earnings. I'm rather excited to kind of see what takes place on Wednesday for Square and Roku reporting. We personally do not hold those in our portfolio, but we are following them very, very aggressively. So again, not a huge amount of earnings on very visible names, but still at the same time, these names could move the overall broader market. So we do want to kind of be prepared and take advantage of any opportunity that presents itself. So let's just jump right in, as we normally do, start off with the S&P 500. So before we get started, I do want to invite you to go ahead and subscribe and like our videos so that you are alerted anytime that we post anything new. We thank you for listening to us, and we are always open to your feedback. Please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. So let's jump right into all of the fun that we've had over the month of July, with the S&P coming in just short of 5.5% up over this past month, but a huge range of discovery as we continue to showcase the bulls stepping in to prop up the market. Now, there has been a little bit of consolidation that held us back just a little bit, roughly about that $324 amount, and we'll highlight that a little bit more on the weekly chart. But as you can tell, we did break through this long horizontal line here that showcased us breaking that longer term trend line that goes back all the way to the beginning of March and February timeframe, to be able to showcase that the bulls are still very much in control. Now the question now becomes, can they maintain that coming in to August and throughout this entire month? We'll take a look and see how things showcase themselves on the weekly chart. You can kind of see us breaking out a little bit further out of this trend line, and we'll shift it to our traditional weekly showcasing value. You can see this longer term channel that has developed that we did see a little bit of a test toward the bottom of the channel and clear rejection, and the bull stepped in and looked at that as a buying signal. But what's very interesting to me is that if we zoom in just a little bit, we can begin to identify that despite the full bullish nature that we've seen over this past week, certainly, and overall from a monthly perspective, we have been able to not take out the previous month's high, the previous week's high. And that is a signal that there still is a little bit of indecision and we still are inside of value. So granted, we've had a huge move over the last several weeks in regards to a breakout, is that breakout is somewhat tempered in not being able to take out the previous week's high. Now, I still believe that we still are very much bullish, but I believe that the strength of that bullish move has begun to slow down despite significant earnings reports that have propelled it potentially to be able to gather strength. Now, if you take a look at what we have really just in the last 2 weeks, despite all of the very positive news on earnings, we really haven't moved that much in regards to price. And certainly we've been kind of held within a relatively tight 7-point trading range. Now, all things being equal, given that we weren't able to take out last week's high, on the average, there should be some type of profit taking to potentially reverse us right back into last week's range. Now, I do believe that we will have some type of sideways action over the next couple of weeks, and certainly could allow us to kind of butt up towards the bottom of this trend line. So we do have a positive skew, bullish nature. So my call for this upcoming week will be slightly bullish, but more so sideways for this week. So we'll see how things play out and look for an opportunity to take some additional profits as always. And as we move on to our NASDAQ, as we move back over to the NASDAQ monthly, you can see that we have shown very solid aggressiveness over the last 4 solid months of nothing but bullish, bullish, bullish. So if you are new to the markets and you see this, you're saying, okay, you can't fail and just buy anything that's technologically related and you'll make money. Last 4 months, that hypothesis has held true. Now, as we come into this upward trend line, is that going to be maintained as we kind of focus in on this look above and fail? Now, is that something that we'll kind of watch moving forward over the next couple of weeks? That is certainly so. So that line coming up with an all-time high of 269.79, that will be the target for us to potentially breach and go forward with some type of continuation. Now, we do see, as we look over the last 4 weeks, despite us making all-time highs, we still have not necessarily moved outside of a larger trading range. And we'll kind of highlight that in the box, a little bit easier to see. We really haven't moved back and forth. And this is a clear visual of that consistent term that we always talk about, is the bulls versus the bears and this push-pull action. Here is a wonderful example of that. Still with a little bit of a pullback, as you can see here in this second bar on the downside, where we breached this trend line, but we're able to kind of fail it and rotate back down to the bottom size of the box to entice buyers to step back in. And that is exactly what is taking place. Now, as we watch for the remainder part of this upcoming week, we want to see if we are able to take out that high, or do we potentially revert back down to this 251 type area and kind of retest this low volume node that we see in the overall profile. So that's something that we'll kind of want to watch here. Is there an opportunity for us to kind of move back downwards, test the bottom of the box, entice buyers again and step forward? Or is there something that we will kind of see from a continuation coming off of very strong earnings for Apple? And we'll get to Apple in just a little while, but do we want to anticipate some kind of follow through given that we've closed on the highs for the week? So my call for the NASDAQ is certainly on the first couple of days of the week. I anticipate some profit taking, primarily for those that are in Apple, with that true and tremendous move toward the close on Friday showcases that we still have a lot of bulls that are out there. Now we'll want to watch that as we move forward onto the Russell. The NASDAQ continues to be strong, but we do want to highlight again, we are in a very, very tight box where we're looking for some type of breakout. Now, if there is some type of breakout, as always, we want to kind of measure this distance of the box and project that to the upside and project that to the downside. Now, if we do project that measurement down to the downside, we would look to kind of come into the bottom of the overall range. Now, I don't believe that we will come down this far, back down to the 237 level, but I do believe we will move forward with some bullish nature moving forward on the NASDAQ. And if we move over to the Russell and jump to the monthly, we will look at see exactly what we have seen from a Russell perspective, which is equally as bullish, but not in the order of magnitude to push us to all-time highs. What we have seen very strong nature over the last 4 months, but at the same time coming in very aggressively and seeing a nice solid rejection of this trend line that butts right up to the 50 period MA, and being able to kind of see some pullback in that area on the weekly. You'll be able to see it just a little bit cleaner, and we'll take a look to see how we are still very aggressively and rotating around the point of control, which indicates to me that the bulls and the bears have found equilibrium roughly about the $145 amount. And we'll watch that to see if there is more accumulation to push us up to the kind of $157 amount is where we're targeting, and that lines up to a high volume node for us here at the $157 amount. If we can kind of project this forward, we do anticipate if there is consolidation that takes place here and we do have an opportunity to break free, this is the next target of roughly $157 amount. So we want to kind of watch the Russell. Obviously the Russell is heavily weighted and impacted by economic decisions and economic impacts. So given some of the things that we started off on the onset of the video in regards to gross domestic product and potentially ongoing additional stimulus to help support businesses from a COVID perspective, it could indicate some type of weakness. And if that does take place coming into next week, where we do see a test of this trend line again and some rejection happens, we do anticipate a nice fallback, potentially even down to the $129 amount. So all things being held true, the market is significantly higher than where the economic indicators showcase that it should be. Now, you don't want to try to fade this bullish move that we are seeing, and we can kind of see that on the Dow. Shift back there to the monthly. Again, 4 months of contiguous bullish nature for the Dow, but we weren't able to get out of value on the monthly, and certainly we're not able to close above this longer term trend line that we have going all the way back to February of the previous years to be able to breach that. So that is potentially an indication that profit is being taken off of 4 months of contiguous buying. We will watch that. And the Dow, given that it is increased just above 2% for the month, we did see the Dow as being the only indice that was not able to eke out a positive close for the week. So this is now 2 weeks back to back where we have seen a negative close. So one more week and we definitely have a trend change potentially. And you can see just off of the weekly, a multiple touch here of the point of control and not even being able to get above this longer term trend line. So from a Dow perspective, we are seeing a little bit more indication of a bearish nature, and we'll watch that. So from a Dow perspective, we do see some continued downward pressure, but I do believe we will test this 266 level one more time, and if we can breach through it, it could be a longer term movement up to this 275 level to retest this high going back into early June. So we want to watch that as we continue to move forward. So let's jump into a couple of commodities and have a little bit of fun. So as we always say in every video, we are very much long gold and continue to be long gold. And we did anticipate and give a nice little pat on ourselves on the back that we did anticipate a breach of this trend line, and oh wow, did we get it, with gold coming up 11% for the month and brought in an all-time high again. So we do look at gold, at least from an ETF perspective, our shorter term target, as we've marked out here in gray, is this $190 level. Now, I did not anticipate that we would get there as fast as we have gotten. However, that's something that just can be aware of, that the order of magnitude can be reached rather soon versus your own hypothesis on timing. So you have to be nimble and you have to be alert in regards to potential profit taken. So our call is 190, and we'll stick with that, and we'll see how this next week unfolds. And as you can see, over the last 2 weeks, very bullish movement from a gold perspective, and a clear reaction to some of the macroeconomic information is coming out. The Federal Reserve has held interest rates steady, but there still is a lot of negative information out there, with upwards of 50+ million people claiming unemployment. So we are looking for some hedges where there are some opportunities for bullish nature. So if we can hit 190 over the next week or 2 weeks, we will look to take some profits in our own individual portfolio. And as a complement to the gold, well, let's take a look at silver. Silver and gold will probably be the title of this video after we record it. Wow, 33+% move of silver over this last week. If you're in silver, please take your left hand and put it over your right shoulder and pat yourself on the back. What a call. Now, we were not in silver, but we did watch a lot of news and a lot of information, and have seen the volume increase pretty dramatically in silver over the last few weeks. And as we look at the weekly, you can kind of see that movement just that much more, and kind of these gaps that have identified themselves pretty easily over the last couple of weeks. We want to watch silver. You can see toward this past week, we did identify some areas for profit taking, and that's something that is important, as the movement and the momentum has just been exponential almost, and it is ripe for a stock such, or ETF such as this, to be able to take some profits, with a 33% gain just in the last 4 weeks. And the month closing on a Friday is a perfect storm for taking some commodity profits. We'll shift over to some individual equities, and we'll highlight certainly Apple, and kind of highlight that move in a little bit more detail. Now, before we jump into equities, we'll take a look at some Bitcoin. So we don't necessarily review Bitcoin, but we do own several, and have owned several for multiple years, going back to all-time highs of 20,000. Now, we did get a review request via our email at carlaysmithholdings.com to review Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin has been on a tear. Can't believe it myself, but I will take the profits when I see them. Now, as we review Bitcoin, you can kind of see this longer term trend line that has been in place going back to June of last year, that was just recently breached over the last few months, and have seen a pretty aggressive movement out of this kind of longer term box over the last 2 months, with a very nice breakout this past month with a little bit over 2,000 point gain. Now, on the future, you are seeing a lot of volume coming in this past month, and we will watch that. And we did identify several months ago that $1,000 level, that $11,000 level, as a potential resistance zone, as it lined up almost closely to our 3-year monthly value, which maps into just 10,539, and we did blow right through that. So our next target for Bitcoin on the upside will be roughly that $13,000 level. We do kind of have mapped out in here, and that aligns right back to our high of August, which is coming in at just over 12,505 to be exactly precise. So we will want to watch that. So we call it as a zone. So pretty much 12,500 all the way to 13,000 as a potential area of resistance, and an area where individuals might take some profit taking. And that is something we'll continue to watch. But in the interim, we will sit back and kind of count our chips. We don't want to count them too early. So if you are long Bitcoin, please look for opportunities to kind of scale back and potentially take some profits, as there is a high potential, given that we've come up so fast so soon, as an opportunity for some type of retracement back inside of value. We'll close out this month's video with Apple, the beast of the NASDAQ, the beast of the Dow, and the beast of the S&P. Very classic pattern, as we call the Zorro pattern, very aggressive move, and certainly outstanding movement over the last few days, given outstanding and blowout earnings, and most importantly, a 4-for-1 stock split. So Apple hasn't split in multiple years, and has become somewhat of a rarity of larger companies to split. But given the price movement that we've seen of Apple over the last few months, again, very similar to all your major indices, pretty much solid 4 months of gain, and almost to the tick coming off into the May time frame, right to value area high over the last 3 years. So there is solid momentum for us to continue up. Where shall she go? No one knows, but we're looking to kind of target that $440 level. So we're going to go ahead and call that early as an opportunity where we will take profits. So manage your own portfolio as appropriately, but we will be looking to take profits at that 440 level as an opportunity for us to look for some type of retracement. Now we'll dig into the weekly. You can kind of see this very significant breakout and alignment right into this low volume node as a potential buy signal going into the latter part of the week. But as they had earnings the latter part of this week, there was some indication that there could be some type of a sell-off within Apple, given some of the news that they're facing and individual CEOs speaking in front of the US Congress in regards to antitrust and potentially some type of legislation to try to curtail some of the impact and the growth of larger tech companies. And Apple is the most valued company now, certainly over $1+ trillion. You can see a huge blowout and a huge range of this last week of almost 52 points, but 40 of those points came just on Friday. We don't normally go into the daily, but we just want to kind of highlight the order of magnitude that was seen coming off of this huge range, and we will look for this to potentially be retested as a particular gap. But we also want to highlight that this was almost filled, as there was an early sell-off on this past Friday, where there was some type of sell-off and some type of negative pressure for the bulls to try to keep afloat, but they ironically ended up doing that. Now, we certainly don't go into inter-time frame, but to highlight the move that was made over that time frame. So this white colored area here is the day session for Apple. So pretty much this range here is the day session this past Friday, and you can see almost immediately after the bell we saw a nice sell-off, but then we saw a little bit of a pullback and then a retest of that low here and right off of this 50 period moving average, and then that was off to the races. So if you were long Apple, kudos to yourself, and also look for opportunities to move your stop up higher depending upon your entry price, because you always want to ensure that you have some ability to kind of lock in profit. So if we zoom back, we will be able to kind of take a look at some of the aspects of this particular move. And if we close out the video right here, I know we're getting very, very long, so I appreciate your patience. This is something that we're very passionate about, and we encourage you to follow us and like and subscribe. But at the same time, we also want you to realize that it's your money and it should be under your control. Take care.